The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 13 verse 11. When I was a child, Apostle Paul speaking now, that when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. So Apostle Paul is saying there was a time that I was a child, and at that stage, there are certain ways I spoke, there are certain ways I understood things, there are certain ways I think about things that you can easily tell that this is coming from a child. But going further in the same verse, he said, but when I became a man. So there was a transition from that childhood stage to what he called being a man. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Let me read this in the NIV version. He said, when I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. I want us to pay attention to these indexes. He is saying that when I was a child, there are certain speakings I bring forth that when you examine it, you can easily tell that this is coming from a child. There are certain way I reason, there are certain way I see things or perceive things that you can easily tell that this is coming from a child. But going further, he said, when I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. And that's the emphasis for this section of this series. He said, I put the ways of childhood behind me. Actually, a verse before this, that's verse 10 of the same chapter, Apostle Paul said, when that which is perfect is come, that which is in part shall be done away with. So we see this transition protocol again, that when that which is perfect is come, that which is in part, that which is not complete, shall be done away with. So it's not a crime to exist at a stage where we have some incomplete understanding. It's not a crime to exist in a place where we have incomplete perceptions. But then we should transition to a phase when that which is perfect now comes. And so when that which is perfect comes, what he called the way of childhood must be done away with. So there are certain things that comes together to form this that we call the way of childhood. And one of it is what we want to camp around in this video. I remember that in Yoruba culture now, or maybe that's how it is generally, there is an age range where when parents want to caution their child, I've seen this a lot among African parents, you know, when they want to caution their children, there are some things they use in scaring them that they know, even they know that it's only for a period of time. All right, so you can see a child going to some place and they be like, police will catch you, police will catch you. They are trying to create a fear because they know that there is an understanding that the child has that is not complete. Maybe the child understood that when the police catches you, they won't treat you well. Maybe that's what he understood. But again, he doesn't understand the part that they should not, if you didn't do anything bad, you are not doing anything criminal, you should not fall into their hands on the side where you'll be punished. I don't know if you get that. That's what I'm saying. That they try to use the police to scare the child. But because the child has an incomplete understanding, they chicken out at the face of those things. In fact, there are many things, not just police. They can tell them there is a particular animal that will catch you from where you are going. What am I saying? All of those things are associated with the way of childhood. Apostle Paul said, when I became a man, I put away the childhood things. That way of childhood, I put it behind me. So really, when those children now grows up, what scares them when they were children now no longer has the capacity to scare them. What causes them to get scared, get afraid, when they get to a particular age, a particular stage, when their understanding is now sharpened more, when their reasoning has now been enhanced, it no longer has the power to scare them. So one of the things that we see associated with the way of childhood is fear and instability. That when we were still children, because of our limited understanding, because of our limited perception, because of our limited way of processing things, because of the limited information that we have, we can have fear and we can be unstable. But it is expected that we get to a point where we can put away even that instability. I read from the book of Ephesians. The book of Ephesians chapter 3 chapter 4, from verse 14. Apostle Paul speaking again, he said that we henceforth. Now I need to pause here a little. That we henceforth. When we see that statement, we must understand, according to English, that it must have been that there was a conversation before this. It means that we henceforth, that means going forward from here. There was a journey that took us to this point, but going forward from here, now the next statement follows. But let's look at what happened till that point where we now says going forward. The conversation started from when Apostle Paul started introducing the gift that Jesus has given us. He said he gave gift unto men. He gave unto some apostles, unto some prophets, unto some pastors, unto some teachers, evangelists. That's Ephesians chapter 4 verse 11 now. Going forward, he said that, let me read from here. Verse 12, it says, for the perfecting of the saints. We are looking at those things that led to the conversation where he now said going forward. I mean, when he now said from here onward, henceforth, he said for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of ministry, for the edifying, the building up of the body of Christ. Verse 13, he said, till we all come in the unity of faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God unto a perfect man. You see that statement again. It must have been that we are existing not in that state of being perfect man, but then by the ministry of the fivefold, we begin to get built to a point where we become perfect man. Apostle Paul said, when I became a man, I put away childish things. So until we come to that perfect man, there are still things associated with childhood that will still be found in our experiences. Fear and instability associated with childhood will still be found in our experiences. So he said, unto a perfect man, unto the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. This is growth. That we grow to a certain point where we become a perfect man. We come into the stature of the fullness of Christ. So at that point, he now says, going forward. So at the point where we have become a man, at the point where we have grown into the fullness of the Christ, he now says that we henceforth, after that point, after coming to that stage of growth, we henceforth be no more children. You see the emphasis again, that when we get to that point where we are no longer children, there is a trait he mentioned, and that's where we are going. But we need to establish what led us to this point. So we have seen that it was growth. We grow to a certain point, and at that point he said, we, going forward now, be no more children. What is the trait? Tossed to and fro. So it means it is the way of childhood, like we have seen, to be tossed to and fro. But when we come to a certain point, going forward from that point, we are no longer children subjected to the tossing to and fro. He said, tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive. Wow. So that when we get to that point of growth, that which was associated with childhood, fear and instability in the context of our study will be done away with. So at that point, we grow to a point where we are no longer subjected to a tossing to and fro. It means if we see a life that is subjected to tossing to and fro by every wave and wind of doctrine, by every vicissitudes of life, by every challenges, when we see a life, an experience that becomes unstable at the face of challenges, when we see a life that becomes unstable even when it comes to our conviction, because you see, it is the way of childhood to believe a thing today and then the following day we no longer believe it. That a child says, because of the limited understanding, a child said this is the way, maybe because he was told. But the time comes when he saw something different in another person, he can quickly change what he believed and then he just moved again. That is the way of childhood. That is instability. But Apostle Paul is saying that we grow to a point where we are no longer tossed to and fro. At that point, we understand the way of God At that point, we know his plans and purposes. At that point, we are no longer subjected to being carried about by every waves and wind of doctrines. We get balanced, we get stable. And that's our focus in this study. But you see, this kind of stability is not achieved by chance. This kind of stability is not achieved by, it doesn't just happen upon people. There is a labor that matures a believer to that point where we get stable. There are people that just simple recommunication of a particular doctrine, they can get tossed away. Not because they didn't believe before, they believed, but it looks like they are still subjected to a tossing to and fro. There's a video in this channel where we treated this subject of conviction. It was titled Levels of Conviction. It's a discussion on the fact that it is possible to believe truth. It is possible to believe at a certain level and still be tossed to and fro. It is possible to understand at a certain level and still be shaking. But our conviction can grow to a point where we get stable in them. So our focus in this new series is to get to that point where we are stable, where we are no longer scared, where we are no longer afraid, where our faith no longer stands in a place where it can be tossed to and fro. It was the Hillsong that sang this song. They said, "Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters, wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my faith could ever wander. At my feet." Oh, it looks like I've lost track of the song now. But what I'm saying in essence is that our faith can grow to a point where we are no longer subjected to waving up and down. How do we achieve this stability? That is our focus in this series. Stability by the word. Because one of the pathways, in fact the primary pathways that has been shown in scriptures for coming to that point where we become stable is the word of God. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 2. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 2. At least up to this point we have been able to establish that instability and fear is associated with childhood. It means if we want to do away with instability, if we want to do away with fear, we have to do away with the ways of childhood. So Apostle Paul said, "When I became a man, I put away childish things." In NIV version it says, "I put away the way of childhood, I put them behind me." So the wavering convictions, the fear, the instability associated with childhood can now be done away with when growth is achieved. So 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 2, it said, "As newborn babies, desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby." This is a powerful prescription of how to grow. Of course, there's a video on this channel as well that talks about spiritual growth. This particular one that we're looking at, this new series, is an emphasis on a section of that. It says, "As newborn babies, desire the sincere milk of the word." So it's not wrong that we are babies. It's not wrong that we exist at a point where we are still afraid, scared, tossed to and fro. It's not wrong. But what is wrong is if we exist at that point for too long. No, the design is that we grow onto a place, we grow onto a perfect man, as we saw in the book of Ephesians chapter 4 verse 13. We grow onto the stature, the full measure of the Christ. And at that point, we are no longer subjected to a tossing to and fro. And that stability, like I said, is not achieved by chance. You see, time does not supply this kind of stability. That we have been in church for so long does not grant this stability. That we have been existing around spiritual things for so long does not guarantee this stability. People can grow in church, grow in age in church and still be afraid. People can grow in church and still not have a solid conviction. They can still be unstable in their knowledge of Christ. They can still be unstable in their convictions of the ways of God. But I show you a more excellent way, and it is to grow even by the word. He said, "Desire the sincere milk of the word, and that ye may grow thereby." That by the sincere milk of the word you may grow. There is a protocol that we can approach even in the word that can grow us to a place where we become stable in our conviction. You see, two people can be inside the same boat that is about to capsize, and one can be stable and the other becomes unstable. One can be at rest while the other is at unrest. If there is a word like that, yes, there is. One can still be calm in the midst of those trouble, and while one is already tattered and battered. The only difference will be in the kind of things they know. So Paul said, when I was a child, there was a way I know things. So in those situations, a child will already be thinking about or imagining the destruction. A child may already put his own mind in the troubles that is about to result. A child may already be seeing the troubles in that situation. While one who has grown up, having a perfect understanding of the provisions of God, the provisions in the kingdom, can understand what has been made available even in the situation of an unrest. So they can be in the boat, there is storm, but Jesus could be sleeping. They can be in a boat, everybody is already troubled while Jesus is still at rest. The difference is not just in what they are seeing. Yeah, they are all seeing the storms, but beyond the storms, there is something that one understood that the other does not understand. And that lack of understanding is characterized, or is a characteristic of a stage that Paul calls the way of childhood. He said, when I was a child, I understood as a child. So there's an understanding attached to the way of childhood, that when we grow, we deal with those kind of understanding, we come on to maturity. And that's what our focus is. Even in this study, that there is a way we can study the word. There is not beyond cramming now. There is a way we can approach the scriptures that will grant us that stability, that we are not tossed to and fro, not by challenges, not by troubles, not by waves of doctrines, not by craftiness, not by deceit. It is possible. It is possible, and that's the plan of God, even for His children, that we come to a place where we are not tossed to and fro. We'll come to a place where we become stable. So we have established that one, it is the way of childhood to be unstable. And then secondly, when we grow, stability comes with it. That we grow to a point where we become stable. So with growth and maturity comes stability. How then is this growth achieved? Stability by the word. And that's what this series is about. So in subsequent videos, we are going to be looking at how is this achieved. What is the protocol for coming into stability? What is the protocol for coming into this kind of maturity, even by the word? There are certain scenarios in scriptures that we are going to be looking at. There are certain events, certain people that we are going to be studying, even in this series. And so I encourage that you subscribe to this YouTube channel, so that as God helps us to record these sessions and upload them, you will be notified and be blessed by it. I also encourage that you like the video and share with as many persons as possible that you perceive that will be needing this, that the Lord is communicating to us even at this time. Because you see, at these times, many will be deceived. That's what the Bible told us. Many will be deceived, not because they didn't believe before. They have believed certain things before, but because they have not come onto that level of stability, they will be tossed to and fro. The love of many will wax cold, not because they didn't have the love before, but they have not grown onto a place where they can be stable even in their love for God. They have not come to a place where they can be stable, they can be established even in their walk with God. That's what this series is about. We want to learn of God. How do we get stable even in our Christian experience? So thank you so much for watching this video. Like I said, ensure you subscribe, like the video, and share with as many persons as possible. Thank you so much. God bless you. Amen.